There is a silent epidemic unfolding right now. It does not make headlines. It does not dominate political debates. Yet, it is hollowing out entire cities from the inside. It is happening to young men who are physically healthy, educated, and fully capable of working, building, and contributing. They are not sick. They are not imprisoned. They are not dead. They have simply stepped out of the visible world. These are men who go days, weeks, sometimes even months, without meaningful human contact. Their only interaction with the outside world may be picking up food left at their door. And this is not a handful of extreme cases hidden in the margins of society. This is a pattern being replicated by millions of men at this very moment. It may be the largest voluntary male withdrawal in modern history, and almost no one wants to confront how serious it truly is. Japan recognized it early and gave it a name, Hikikomori. But believing this is a distant cultural anomaly is a dangerous mistake. This phenomenon is no longer confined to one country or one continent. It is happening in Western cities, in small towns, in neighborhoods you pass through every day. The data shows that young men today spend more time in total isolation than any previous generation recorded in human history. For many of them, loneliness is no longer an occasional phase. It has become their default state. The easy explanation is to dismiss them as lazy, immature, addicted to video games, unwilling to take responsibility. That narrative is convenient. It allows society to avoid deeper reflection. But the truth is far more unsettling. Most of these men did not retreat because they are incapable. They retreated because, at a fundamental level, their survival instincts concluded that continuing to engage was irrational. The human brain operates on a simple biological principle: effort must lead to reward. This rule is deeply wired into our nervous system. When your mind calculates that you will expend enormous energy for little or no return, it does not simply encourage you to try harder. It begins to shut down motivation. The drive weakens. Initiative fades. You withdraw before you even begin. That is precisely what is happening. An entire generation has done the math, and the conclusion they are reaching is terrifying. The game of modern life, as it is currently structured, no longer feels worth playing. Many young men have come to believe that striving in the traditional system is a losing proposition. And when you examine the numbers they face daily, you begin to understand why they feel that way. Compare the financial reality of a 5-year-old man today to that of his father at the same age. This is not nostalgia. It is purchasing power. To achieve the same basic standard of living his father once had, a young man today often needs close to 30% more real income. And that increase is not for luxury. It is merely to stay afloat. Look at housing. The cost of property has skyrocketed relative to wages. In previous decades, buying a first home before 30 was a realistic milestone. It symbolized entry into adulthood, stability, progress. Today, that milestone has drifted toward the late 30s, sometimes even beyond. That is nearly a lost decade. 10 years of rent consuming a disproportionate share of income. 10 years of sharing cramped apartments with strangers. 10 years of remaining in a childhood bedroom while watching independence move further away each year. And money is only half the equation. The other half strikes directly at identity, instinct, and self-worth. The transformation of the dating landscape. Courtship has migrated into a hyper-competitive digital arena. Dating apps have created an invisible hierarchy governed by algorithms and instantaneous visual judgment. In this environment, a small percentage of highly attractive men receive a disproportionate share of attention. Studies frequently suggest that a minority of men capture the majority of female interest on these platforms. And what happens to the rest? A large portion of average men compete for a fraction of visibility. Day after day, they log in and receive little to no response. Imagine what that does to the psyche. It is not merely rejection. It is the persistent impression that you are invisible, that you are not even considered an option. The brain processes this subconsciously. It registers that you are working harder for diminishing financial returns. It registers that the romantic marketplace appears structurally tilted. It begins to interpret the situation not as a challenge to overcome, but as a rigged system. This is not a story about men who lack the ability to compete. It is about men who have decided that the reward no longer justifies the cost of participation. And here is where the narrative shifts, in a way many observers fail to see. When these men conclude that the physical world offers them little chance of advancement, they do not simply sit in darkness, staring at a blank wall. Human energy does not vanish. The need for achievement, recognition, belonging, and purpose does not evaporate. It relocates. It migrates to environments where the rules still appear consistent, where effort visibly leads to progress, where hierarchy feels transparent, where identity can be constructed and measured. Physical withdrawal does not mean mental emptiness. The man alone in his room is rarely doing nothing. His mind is still searching, still competing, still strategizing. The male brain, shaped by evolutionary pressures, is oriented toward three core drives: competence, status within a hierarchy, and mission. A man needs to feel useful. He needs to understand where he stands relative to others. He needs a challenge that demands growth and offers tangible feedback. If the real world repeatedly signals that he is replaceable, irrelevant, or unnecessary, he will look elsewhere. He will seek digital arenas, online communities, virtual economies, gaming ecosystems, niche forums, content creation platforms anywhere. The metrics are clear, and the effort to reward ratio feels fair. In those spaces, leveling up is visible. Skill is measurable. Contribution can be acknowledged instantly. Status can be earned in weeks rather than decades. Identity can be crafted with autonomy. From the outside, it looks like escapism. From the inside, it often feels like the only environment where the rules still make sense. The tragedy is not that these men desire nothing. It is that they desire deeply: achievement, respect, partnership, purpose, but no longer trust that the traditional path will deliver those outcomes. So they conserve their energy. They disengage from arenas that feel hostile or futile. They redirect their focus to spaces where their actions produce immediate feedback. The question we must ask is not simply, why are they withdrawing? The more difficult question is, what structural signals are telling them that engagement is irrational? Until that question is addressed honestly, the silent epidemic will continue to expand. Cities will look full, offices will operate, economies will move, but beneath the surface, millions of capable young men will remain psychologically checked out, participating minimally, investing cautiously, withholding ambition. They are not absent because they lack potential. They are absent because, after running the calculations again and again, they concluded that the visible world no longer offers a proportional return on their effort. And when a generation quietly reaches that conclusion, the consequences do not stay confined to bedrooms and screens. They ripple outward into birth rates, innovation, civic life, relationships, and culture itself. The withdrawal is silent, but its impact will not be. This is where the great digital migration begins. You cannot look at video games or online communities as if they were still simple distractions, harmless hobbies people turn to after work. They have evolved into fully developed virtual economies and highly sophisticated social systems that offer something many men feel the real world no longer provides. In these digital arenas, effort connects directly and immediately to reward. The relationship is visible. It is measurable. It is predictable. If you spend hours refining a skill, you level up. If you coordinate a team to accomplish a difficult objective, you gain recognition. If you invest time and strategy, the system responds. The rules are clear. They are transparent. Most importantly, they are consistent. For millions of men, the digital world feels more meritocratic, more structured, and in many ways more honest than the society they physically inhabit. There is no ambiguity about what is required. There is no invisible social code shifting beneath their feet. The feedback loop is tight, immediate, and fair. But when you look closer at who is leaving the tangible world behind, a darker pattern emerges. This is not random. The data does not show an even distribution across society. Men without university degrees are withdrawing at roughly 3 times the rate of college graduates. Those living in declining industrial regions are disappearing from public participation at twice the speed of their urban counterparts. And then there is a factor that many prefer not to mention because it ignites controversy the moment it is spoken: the absence of a father in the home. Men who grew up without a present father figure are dramatically overrepresented in statistics of isolation, disengagement, and withdrawal. The numbers are so disproportionate they are almost uncomfortable to confront. This reveals something crucial. We are not witnessing a simple outbreak of so-called toxic masculinity, as some academic narratives repeatedly insist. What we are witnessing is something far more fundamental and far more dangerous. We are witnessing a vacuum of guidance, a vacuum of structure, a vacuum of disciplined love, and above all, a vacuum of hope. Psychologists once studied a phenomenon in animals known as learned helplessness. If you place a dog in a cage and administer unpredictable electric shocks, shocks it cannot foresee, cannot control, and cannot escape, at first it will fight. It will try to break free. It will scratch, jump, and search desperately for a way out. But if the shocks continue randomly, with no pattern and no correlation to its behavior, something changes. The animal eventually realizes that nothing it does alters the outcome. Pain comes regardless of effort. Action produces no meaningful difference. And so it lies down. Even if, later, you open the door of the cage, the dog will not run out. It has internalized the belief that its actions do not matter. It has learned helplessness. We have built the human equivalent of that cage. An entire generation of men has absorbed, through economic blows and social rejection, the message that their effort does not move the needle, that their labor is interchangeable, that their ambition is unwelcome, that the system is indifferent to their contribution. When a man repeatedly experiences that his striving produces no proportional return, when he sees doors close regardless of how hard he knocks, something inside him begins to shut down. And like that defeated animal, he lies down. Not always physically, but socially, economically, spiritually. The numbers behind this are not abstract theories. Male labor force participation during the prime working years of 25 to 54 has fallen from approximately 98% in 1960 to around 88% today. 10 percentage points may sound small, but in a nation of millions, that difference represents vast numbers of able-bodied men who have stepped away from productive engagement. Male university enrollment has dropped to around 40%. Suicide rates among men are roughly 4 times higher than among women, and the trajectory continues upward. These are not cold statistics. They are symptoms of widespread demoralization. And what makes this so dangerous is not only the private tragedy of each isolated life. The deeper danger lies in what happens to civilizations when large populations of young men feel they have nothing to strive for, nothing to protect, nothing to lose. History is unambiguous on this point. Again and again, periods of profound instability have been preceded by a surplus of unattached, purposeless young men. Major revolutions, social collapses, waves of extremism, these were not born in stable households, filled with meaning and opportunity. They were fueled by men who concluded they had no future within the existing structure. We prefer to believe that modern society is too advanced, too educated, too technologically sophisticated to fall into such patterns. But human biology has not changed in thousands of years. The psychological architecture of young men remains the same. When masculine energy lacks direction, it does not evaporate. It accumulates. And accumulated energy must go somewhere. It has only 2 exits: implosion or explosion. Implosion happens quietly. It occurs behind closed doors. It looks like addiction that no one talks about. It feels like depression that paralyzes. It ends, too often, in suicide. Deaths of despair among men under 45 have risen dramatically in the past decades. It is a slow-motion massacre unfolding in bedrooms, basements, and small apartments far from television cameras. It is the man who drinks himself numb because sobriety forces him to confront a sense of irrelevance. It is the man who abuses medication not to feel pleasure, but simply to feel less. Explosion, on the other hand, is what happens when despair transforms into rage and spills outward. It manifests as radicalization, political violence, extremism. When you examine the profiles of many domestic terrorists or mass shooters in recent years, a consistent pattern appears. Socially isolated young men, immersed for long stretches in obscure online forums, searching for an explanation for their suffering. They are not born violent. They are searching for meaning. When they cannot find it in constructive structures, they sometimes accept destructive narratives that promise significance. Pause and absorb this reality. These are not isolated tragedies scattered randomly across the social landscape. These are conditions that historically precede rupture. We are stacking dry wood at the base of our institutions while pretending there is no fire risk. And the spark that ignites it does not need to be large. It can come from economic shock, political crisis, cultural humiliation, a single triggering event. What makes this situation even more cruel is the cultural reaction to it. Instead of recognizing the warning signs, instead of asking what is malfunctioning in the structure that causes millions of potential builders to fade into ghosts, the response has often been mockery. Male tears become memes. The phrase fragile masculinity is wielded like a weapon to shut down conversations about male pain. Men are told their struggles are irrelevant because they are presumed privileged by default. They are informed that if they fail, it is solely due to their own incompetence. Imagine what that message does to someone already teetering on the edge of learned helplessness. It confirms the belief that not only do his actions not matter, but his suffering does not matter either. And when a society repeatedly signals to a large segment of its young men that they are disposable, that they are laughable, that their confusion is contemptible, it should not be surprised when withdrawal accelerates. The digital world then becomes not merely entertainment, but refuge. It becomes the last arena where competence is rewarded, where hierarchy is earned, where brotherhood can be simulated, where missions exist and victories are tangible. It becomes the space where a man can feel necessary again. If we continue to ignore this pattern, if we continue to reduce it to slogans and caricatures, we risk misunderstanding the scale of what is unfolding. This is not about defending bad behavior. It is about recognizing a structural imbalance before it metastasizes. A civilization cannot indefinitely sideline its builders without consequences. It cannot ridicule a generation into strength. It cannot shame men into purpose. Purpose must be offered. Structure must be rebuilt. Guidance must be restored. Otherwise, the implosions will continue in silence, and the explosions will arrive without warning. Do you know what happens when you systematically tell a group of people that their problems are not real, that their suffering is a joke, that their frustration is nothing more than weakness? You push them, slowly but inevitably, into the arms of the first person who tells them the opposite. You drive them toward whoever is willing to say, "I see you. I hear you. Your pain is real." And right now, far too often, the only voices willing to validate that pain are the worst possible ones. Scammers, merchants of resentment, political extremists. These are the ones recruiting in massive numbers because they are the only ones offering recognition. They say, "I understand your anger, and I have the solution." It does not matter if the solution is destructive. It does not matter if it leads to chaos. For someone drowning in indifference, even a toxic lifeline feels better than being ignored. The real crisis is not only that men are falling behind. The deeper crisis is that we are allowing the only people throwing them a rope to be those who want to burn everything down. This is how the vicious cycle perpetuates itself, and it is a deadly trap. When a man withdraws, he does not just lose one thing. He triggers a domino effect that tears through every dimension of his life. It often begins with work. When he stops working, he loses income. Yes, but he loses something far more essential: daily structure, responsibility, the quiet dignity of being useful. Without that, days blur together. There is no rhythm, no forward motion, no measurable progress. And without stability, dating becomes nearly impossible. Women are not shallow for hesitating to partner with a man who is unemployed and directionless. They are responding to deep biological and psychological instincts. A man who cannot provide for himself, who lacks the capacity to protect or to build, represents uncertainty. He feels like risk, not partnership. So romantic hope fades. And when hope fades, another massive incentive for self-improvement disappears with it. Without work and without love, social life begins to collapse. You stop attending birthdays because you cannot afford a gift. You decline dinner invitations because you cannot pay your share, and the shame is unbearable. Your circle shrinks quietly, almost invisibly, until it is just you and a screen. Without community, without intimacy, without purpose, the natural mechanisms that regulate mental health begin to erode. Depression does not arrive as dramatic tragedy. It settles in like a permanent fog. Change starts to feel impossible. Effort feels pointless. Withdrawal becomes permanent. And our safety nets are not designed for this slow decline. Mental health systems intervene when there is an acute crisis, not during the silent deterioration that precedes it. Social programs assist those who are visibly homeless, not those who disappear behind the closed door of a rented apartment. Millions slip through the cracks unnoticed until they reappear as a statistic, an arrest, an overdose, a headline. But it does not have to be this way. There are places in the world where this decline is not happening with the same intensity, and that tells us something important. It tells us the problem is not inevitable. In certain countries, leaders understood something fundamental. Young men need a visible path of progress. They need to see how effort translates into advancement. They need structure that rewards discipline. Systems were built where a teenager who does not want to pursue university can enter vocational training, earn real money, develop real skills, and see tangible improvement in status every few months. The message is simple and powerful. If you do this, you will achieve that. Cause and effect are restored. Effort and reward are reconnected. In other places, structured service, whether military or civic, has been used not only for defense, but for development. Young men are given discipline, brotherhood, and a shared mission before being released into the competitive world of the labor market. What do these successful models share? They do not hand out comfort. They do not lower standards. They are demanding, but they offer clarity. They provide a ladder instead of a wall. They restore the ancient equation that says, sacrifice leads to growth, and growth leads to dignity. So what do you do with this information? If you are one of the men who feels tempted to give up, who feels that the couch is safer than the world, understand something crucial. Your brain is lying to you in the name of protection. Comfort can be poison. Withdrawal feels safe because it shields you from rejection and failure, but it also guarantees stagnation. You must urgently find an area in your life where cause and effect still function. Start with your body. It is the most basic system of truth. Lift weight and muscle grows. Run and endurance improves. There is no politics in that. No ideology. No opinion. Just physics. Through voluntary hardship, you reclaim a sense of control. Through discipline, you begin rebuilding your internal architecture. From there, expand outward. If you are a father, stop shielding your son from difficulty. You are not protecting him. You are weakening him. The world will not treat him gently. Your responsibility is not to remove every obstacle, but to prepare him to carry weight. Let him fail. Let him scrape his knees. Let him confront consequences. Real self-esteem is born from overcoming resistance, not from hollow praise. Strength emerges from tested limits. If you are a woman, understand that the scarcity of stable, grounded, capable men is not random. It is the predictable outcome of a system that has destabilized its providers. You cannot expect to find warriors in a garden that only cultivates passivity. The equation affects everyone. This is not a battle of genders. It is a structural imbalance with collective consequences. As a society, we stand at a point of no return. There are only three paths forward. The first is to continue ignoring the problem, mocking isolated men, dismissing their loneliness, and hoping they disappear. That path guarantees rising violence, social fragmentation, and economic instability. The second is to attempt coercion shame, authoritarian laws, social pressure to force men back into participation. That will not create loyalty. It will create rebellion. The third path is the most difficult and the only viable one. Repair the underlying conditions. Create real economic pathways. Stop demonizing masculinity and instead channel it toward constructive ends. Recognize that the men who are disappearing are not monsters. They are the canary in the coal mine. They are the early warning signal that something in the social atmosphere has turned toxic. They have already made their choice. They have said no to the world as it currently stands. The question now is whether the rest of society is capable of building a world worth returning to. And if you believe this is merely philosophical, or a mental health issue that does not affect you because your own life is stable, look more closely at the walls around you. Modern civilization is a thin sheet of ice floating over an ocean of chaos. That ice remains solid because of an invisible army of men performing dangerous, exhausting, unglamorous labor that no one else wants to do. Every time you turn on a faucet and clean water flows, every time you flip a switch and darkness vanishes, every time you walk on paved ground that does not collapse beneath you, you are relying on men willing to descend into sewers, climb electrical towers in storms, pour concrete under burning sun, and maintain the infrastructure that sustains comfort. This is not about gender politics. It is about social physics. Remove the incentive for men to take risks and sacrifice their bodies for the common good, and the machinery that sustains modern life begins to corrode. At first, the rust is silent. Systems weaken quietly. But when structural integrity fails, collapse is sudden and violent. Here we stand before an abyss of our own making. The men who have locked themselves in their rooms are not villains plotting destruction. They are fractured mirrors reflecting a society that forgot why it needed them. They are living proof that human beings do not function without purpose, without respect, without a visible horizon to move toward. Their silence is the loudest warning you will ever hear. The final question is not what the government will do or what tomorrow's headlines will say. The question is personal. If you are still fighting, understand that no one is coming to rescue you. There will be no cavalry. There will be no public recognition. You must become your own architect and your own savior. You must construct your value in the dark, when no one is watching, not for applause, not for validation, but so that when you look into the mirror, you do not feel shame. And for those watching from a distance, the warning is simple. You can keep ignoring the millions of men who are disappearing. You can keep mocking their solitude and minimizing their pain. But do not be surprised when one day the ground begins to shake, and you look around for someone to hold the weight of the world and discover there is no one left willing to carry it. A man with nothing to lose is dangerous, but a society with no men willing to defend and sustain it is already dead.